Every September, millions of kids walk into classrooms already running on empty, not because they didn't get enough hours of sleep, but because the sleep they got didn't actually restore them. And nobody, not the teacher, not the pediatrician, not the school counselor, is connecting that to how those children breathe. If you have a child who struggles at school with focus, with sitting still, with keeping their emotions together, with holding on until 3 o'clock, and you have tried everything and the new school year is starting and you already know it is going to be a hard one, then this episode is for you. Because I want to give you a lens that almost no one in your child's school is going to offer you. And once you have it, you are going to see your child's struggles in a completely different way. Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm a myofunctional therapist and the founder of Breathing into Life. And this time of year, right at the start of the school year, I hear from a lot of families, new classroom, new teacher, same concerns. And what I want to offer today is the question that is never asked in any IEP meeting, any pediatric appointment, any parent-teacher conference. The question is not just, can my child sit still and pay attention? The question is, does my child's body have what it needs to be able to do those things? Because those are very different questions. And the answer to the second one changes everything about how you understand the first. So there is something about the start of a school year that makes things visible that were easier to overlook during the summer. In the summer, the schedule is loose, the demands are flexible. A child who struggles with focus and regulation can move through the day without being measured against a standard. And then September comes, and suddenly that same child has to sit in a chair for 6 hours a day, receive and retain information, manage transitions, regulate emotions in a group setting, and perform on demand. And the gap becomes visible. Focus, memory, emotional regulation, impulse control, all of these are brain function. And brain functions require one thing above almost anything else: oxygen. A child who is not breathing well at night and during the day is a child whose brain is not getting what it needs to perform those functions. And what most people do not realize is that the connection between how a child breathes at night and how their brain performs at school the next day is direct. It is measurable. And it is almost entirely ignored in standard educational and pediatric settings. I want to change that, at least for the families that are listening to this, because if your child has been labeled distracted, immature, difficult, behind, anxious, ADHD, and nobody has ever asked how they breathe, that label is incomplete. So, what happens in the brain during a night of disrupted breathing? Let me start with the night, because the night is where this begins. When we sleep, the brain moves through cycles: light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, and in the deep sleep and the REM stages that do the work. Deep sleep is when the brain consolidates what was learned during the day, moves information from short-term to long-term memory, repairs and restores the body, produces a growth hormone. Now, REM sleep is when the brain processes emotion, rehearses social scenarios, makes creative connections, and regulates the nervous system for the next day. These are not optional stages. These are stages that make a child ready to learn, ready to regulate, ready to be in a classroom. Now, a child with sleep disorder breathing is being pulled out of these stages all night long. Not dramatically, not in a way that looks like a crisis, but repeatedly, consistently, night after night. by partial airway obstruction, by the effort of breathing through a narrowed or congested airway, by small drops in oxygen that the brain detects and responds to by lightening the sleep to protect the body. This child may be in bed for 10 hours and wake up having spent very little time in the stages that actually restore the brain. The number of hours in bed is not the same as the quality of sleep inside those hours. And what does the brain look like the next morning? Working memory is depleted. The ability to hold information in mind while using it, impulse control is reduced. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that says wait, think, pause, is the first to go offline when the brain is exhausted. Frustration tolerance is low, and small things become big things because the brain does not have the resources to regulate the response. Attention shifting is harder, moving from one task to the next, stopping one thing and starting another. All that requires executive function that is depleted when the brain cannot restore cleanly. And this is not a learning disability. This is not a character flaw. This is a tired brain being asked to perform as though it was rested, and it cannot do so. I think about the families I see at this time of year, a child who has been flagged by their teacher for inattention and impulsivity. The parents are exhausted. They have tried everything. They are in the early stages of an ADHD evaluation. In the intake, the mom almost always mentions he snores every night. He is restless. He has never once slept with his mouth closed. The teacher's concerns are real. The child's struggles are real, but the root has never been identified. So what is mouth breathing? What is it actually doing to the brain during the school day? Now, let's talk about the daytime piece because this is not only a nighttime problem. A child who mouth breathes at home is almost certainly mouth breathing at school, at their desk, during instruction, during independent work, at lunch, at recess. And here is what that means for their brain. Nasal breathing produces nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It opens the blood vessels, increases blood flow, and significantly increases the amount of oxygen that reaches the brain. Mouth breathing bypasses this entirely. So, picture two children sitting in the same classroom, same teacher, same lesson, same assignment. One child is breathing through their nose. Their brain is receiving full nitric oxide enhanced oxygen delivery. The other child is breathing through their mouth. Their brain is receiving measurably less oxygen. Same classroom, same lesson, same teacher, two very different brains. And we wonder why one child can't keep up. And there is one more layer to this that I want you to understand. That a child who mouth breathes is almost always a child with some degree of chronic nasal congestion. And that congestion makes nasal breathing feel genuinely difficult, even uncomfortable, even when they try. So the child who has learned to breathe through their mouth is not choosing to. Their body has adapted to a pattern that feels necessary. And until the underlying cause of that pattern is addressed, the nasal airway, the oral posture, the tongue function, asking them to simply breathe through their nose is like asking someone to run on a sprained ankle. The instruction is not wrong, but the body just cannot comply. So let me paint a picture because I want you to be able to see your child in this. The child with sleep disorder breathing and chronic mouth breathing walks into school in the morning. They may actually start the day reasonably okay. The body has reserves. The morning adrenaline helps. But as the morning goes on, as the oxygen debt accumulates, as the sleep deficit compounds, things start to unravel. The teacher notices the child losing their place during reading, needing instructions repeated, staring out the window during a lesson they seemed engaged with 10 minutes ago. This is depleted working memory. When the child starts fidgeting, getting up from their seat, tapping, bouncing, finding reasons to move, this is the dysregulated nervous system seeking input, trying to wake itself up. Then a transition happens, time to stop one thing and start another, and the child cannot make that shift cleanly. There is resistance, maybe an outburst, maybe tears, maybe a shutdown. This is impulse control running on a depleted tank. And then by the afternoon, the child who was holding it together, using every resource they had just to get through the morning, has nothing left. So they fall apart at lunch, they fall apart at recess, they fall apart in the car on the way home. They walk through the front door and completely unravel. And the mama who's been at work all day or caring for other children or just trying to get dinner on the table gets the version of her child that has nothing left to give. The child who falls apart the moment they walk through the door is not being dramatic. They have been working harder than anyone realizes just to get through the day. And the teacher calls it distracted. The pediatrician calls it immature. The school counselor talks about emotional regulation skills. All of those things may be true. But if nobody has asked how this child breathes at night, the picture is absolutely incomplete. So I want to spend a few minutes on this because I think it's important to understand why this connection is so rarely made. It is not because providers do not care. It is because the system they work within were not designed to look for it. School systems assess academic performance and behavioral presentation. Pediatric offices screen for developmental milestones and acute medical conditions. The ADHD evaluation process, even a thorough one, does not include an airway assessment. And yet, the symptom overlap between ADHD and sleep disorder breathing in children is so significant that researchers have been writing about it for decades. Inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, emotional dysregulation, these are all the presenting features of ADHD. They are also the presenting features of a child who is chronically sleep deprived and oxygen compromised. So I want to be very clear. I am not saying every child with ADHD has an airway problem. I am not saying airway work replaces any intervention that is helping your child. What I am saying is this. Some children who are diagnosed with ADHD have their symptoms resolve or significantly improve when the airway is addressed. And some children who are being evaluated for ADHD are actually children whose primary driver is disrupted sleep from an airway that has never been looked at. And stimulant medication, which may be absolutely right intervention for some children, does not address that oxygen deficient. It does not address the sleep quality. It does not address the functional root. So if your child is struggling at school and nobody has asked how they breathe at night, that question has not been answered. And I want to give you something concrete to do about it starting tonight. So after your child falls asleep, go check on them. Is their mouth open? Is there any sound? Snoring, heavy breathing, a rattling or congested sound? Are they restless? Moving around, kicking off the covers, waking up sweaty? Are they grinding their teeth? And in the morning, does your child wake up tired? Not just groggy, but genuinely unrefreshed, like the sleep did nothing. During the day, at the homework table, watching TV, eating dinner, watch how they breathe. Is the mouth open? Are the lips resting together? And if you have a relationship with their teacher, ask not just about attention and behavior, but about energy. Does the child seem tired? Does performance or behavior change across the day? In the afternoon, is it harder than the morning? And if any of this is familiar, if you are nodding, if you are thinking about your child specifically, I want you to bring the airway into the conversation, not instead of any evaluation that is already helping, but in addition to it. Because a functional evaluation, one that looks at how your child breathes, where their tongue rests, how their airway is functioning is the piece that is almost never part of the conversation, and it needs to be. So, the free webinar I put together walks through exactly how breathing and oral function affects your child's development and what to do when you think the airway is a part of the picture. So, this is the place that I would start. And if your child is walking into a new school year and you already know it is going to be a hard one, I want you to know something, that there may be a piece of this that nobody has looked at yet. And finding that piece does not have to be complicated. It starts with asking a different question. Not just, why can't my child focus? But, does my child's body have what it needs to focus? And the free webinar is the place to start. It's at the link in the bio, it's in the description, and I will see you there.